Hello, everybody. This is Frost Iron, and today I'm going to be giving a quick guide to Click-Debuff in Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. So, what you can see here on the screen is my standard DPS team. My standard DPS team where I'm putting all my DPS on Ashara and pushing as far as I can. I've already done that, and as you'll see here, I've hit my wall. I'm at 725, and by spamming ults and by stacking Baloths, I could burning more potions. I could maybe push a little further, but for all practical purposes, this is my wall. So that's my wall with the DPS team. So what is Click-Debuff? Click-Debuff, rather than stacking everything on a DPS champion, Click-Debuff uses this number right here, this E163 that I've got, and fill your team with debuffers. So basically every debuff adds to this value, and so even though my level is 533 with my click damage, by stacking enough debuffs, I will be able to push well past that 725 marker. So the first thing I want to cover is the core of Click-Debuff. These three champions are the absolute core. Freely, which we'll be using in Chaotic spec, has just an incredibly powerful stacking debuff. Kroll also very, very powerful debuff. Warden is core for two reasons. First off, his ult will pull in ranged characters, which with ranged bosses can sometimes be essential. You can actually just get stuck and not be able to advance if you don't have Warden. Theoretically, somebody else like Lizops might be able to pull in if you can manage it, or Prudence has the same ult. But Warden, the second reason is that Warden is free from Mert, so there's no reason not to have him. He's also a chaotic debuffer, and when used in his Cloak of Fly spec, he has an AoE attack, so Warden is just absolutely perfect. There's no reason not to have him. Click-Debuff is a mid to late game strategy, so yeah, if you don't have Mert yet, if you don't have Warden, you're probably not ready for Click-Debuff anyway. The other two champions that I consider effectively core champions are Kira, because she's just so powerful. She is the queen of debuffs. You probably have her anyway. And Ayla. Ayla is a little more controversial. You can definitely do it without her. But Ayla is the best or second best tank in the game, depending on who you ask. And Ayla is chaotic for stacking with freely. And Ayla has a very powerful debuff. We use her in her left spec so that she applies it to everything as quickly as possible. And so it's very easy to say that Ayla is the queen of Click-Debuff tanking. There are a bunch of other debuffers as well, but let's say you only had these guys. Let's say you only had these core champions and you wanted to try Click-Debuff. That's actually enough. That's enough to go on. So what you do is you throw in fillers that you've got. So Zorbo has a chaotic AoE attack, so we'd use him. Havilar has a chaotic AoE attack, so we'd use her. Another champion that is quite handy if you've got her is Sentry. Sentry is not a debuffer, but Sentry's arrow synergy with Ayla, I've heard increases her debuff. I actually don't know for sure, but that's what I've heard, and I assume it's true. So it's kind of hard to track that number because it bounces up and down very quickly. But we're gonna say it does. And then, other than Chaotix, there's a couple of other champions you can consider throwing in. If you don't have Havilar, you can use Eliwick. Eliwick has a weak debuff, but also is useful for Gold Find. And if you have him, Narak actually can be tossed in here and has a little bit of utility. Narak will buff Sentry's arrow synergies, so I have heard. And it will definitely buff your tank's hit point shares, so you can make your team a little beefier that way. So, yeah, let's just go with this. So basically, we've just got the core debuffers and then a couple of fillers. And you'll be able to see pretty quickly that I'll just let them go. I'm not even gonna help it by clicking at this point. And pretty soon they should start popping. Takes them a little bit to stack up the debuffs, and there they go. See, bang, bang, there they go. Everything's blowing up there, and we're down to one mob. And that's going to happen all the time on boss levels. And that's why the other effectively core champion is Jim. You just have to have Jim because otherwise you have no way to pop these things. So yeah, you just swap to Jim, he'll turn it into a chicken, kill it, you move on. Now I'm not sure how far this particular team can make it, but while they do their thing, we'll talk about the other debuffers. So the first one we'll talk about is Gromma. Gromma's fairly weak as a debuffer, but Gromma also has a hit point share, so we like Gromma. Gromma's a useful champion for this. Now, the next one that we would want to talk about is, Narak is good and well, but Beetle and Grim. Grim is a contender for the top debuffer when stacked. Except maybe for a really, really high-end Orkira. But Grim is an extremely strong debuffer. So, you know, if you do a Click-Debuff run, say goodbye to Hugh, you're going to want to throw in Beetle right at the start, get those long rest stacks going, so that, you know, when you get deeper into the run, you can pull out Grim and go with that. So, Warden is in the same slot as Strix, and fortunately, since Warden's debuff is sticky, you can just swap to Strix, right? You know, you let... Warden's debuff is great because it, you know, he's got it AoE, it sticks on everything, and then even when you kill what it was on, it transfers to a new one. So you really only have to let him get a few hits in, and then you can swap to Strix, and you're good to go. Leave Warden in for now. Penelope is one of those, just if you've got her, you use her. You use Penelope in her Erupting Earth spec, because that makes the attack AoE. And it's got a bit of a debuff on there. It's a fairly strong debuff. And then the last dedicated debuffer is Talon. Oops, move this around a little bit. I guess I'll wait here, because I want to put him in Havilar's spot. Talon has a fairly weak debuff, but his attack is Area of Effect and Chaotic, and has a little slow on it, so all together he, you know, basically he wins that last available slot that we've got. So we'll put him in here, but actually we'll swap. And it's kind of convenient that even in Avernus where you need 3 tanks, we have actually got 3 tanks that we want to be using, so it's not a problem. You know, your mileage will vary, again, if you don't have these exact champions. As you've seen, you know, I did not need anywhere near all of these guys in order to make it this far. So it's not evident just yet, but you do actually have to active click. You have to active click to help them out. Now you see they're going very slow. That's a combination of Gromma and Talon now. Which, you know, just gives you a little bit more time for those debuffs to stack up before they hit your tank line. If you've got squishies on the front line, for example, that can be helpful. There's certainly a bit of an art to letting them stack or not letting them stack debuffs. You know, sometimes it's easier if you let them hit your tank line a bit. Sometimes it's easier if you just start clicking right away. You'll kind of get a feel for, you know, how things are going. It kind of has to do with weird things, you know, like the size of the mob and, you know, how they come in, how quickly they stack up, and how far above your actual click damage you are. You know, how many debuffs you need on them in order to advance. One important thing to remember when you're doing Click-Debuff is you want to make sure to pick a level that does not have armored enemies. Armored enemies do not play nice with Click-Debuff. And the other thing to remember is do not use a Fire Breath potion, because when you use a Fire Breath potion, your click damage no longer does this base damage. It only does damage based off of your bud, and that's not going to work for you. Although I suppose at this point it actually would work, but that's okay. Now, every once in a while, and you can do this more often or less often, depending on your own personal preference, you will need to stop and do some Azaka farming. And I'm just going to do an example of that real quick, just in case. So, ideally, you would want to do this with a monster that has at least 20, but preferably 30 or 40 Kroll Pilfer stacks. But if you're not super familiar with Azaka farming, you know, all you really need to do is you put in Azaka, and you put in all your gold find champions, and then you want some way to keep the monster off of your dudes. It may just be that you can let it hit your line, and you'll have a healer, and that's fine. If you've got, if it's a single tank thing, you can just throw Briv in front. In this case, I'm using Havilar. Havilar's imps throw a stacking slow, and so after a few, it basically won't be moving anymore. And you know, I've got a fairly full team of gold find champions. Some champions, such as Baloth, actually have a sticky gold debuff, so that's why I'm letting him hit once, and then I'm swapping to Jorlaxle before I farm. Normally, I'd also be stacking up all my clairvoyance potions. I guess, you know what? Might as well do it. I've got plenty of them. So, yeah, you know, you stack up your potions, you get all your guys going, and then, because I'm using Omen, Omen's got a nice gold buff, but it's on a timer, so you have to wait for this to hit 100, and then you pop everything. And hey, you see the gold flow in. Hopefully we'll get enough to at least get a couple levels. Yeah, it looks like we will. Now, personally, I prefer to farm whenever I get lucky with this thing. You know, with this final boss mob, if it has 30 stacks, even if sometimes if it has 20, if it's been a while, I'll just go ahead at that point. But I'm not going to take too long here. I'm hoping I can get at least to... Yep, okay, so, you know, I was able to push it up a little bit. Yay, we're good. But I'm not going to belabor that. This is not really about Azaka farming. I figure if you're at the point where you are doing Click-Debuff, you probably know how to Azaka farm already. So I suppose the other thing to talk about, just real quick, is Orkira stacking. If you're not familiar with Orkira stacking, there are some tricks you can do to increase her healing flame, which is her debuff. And it's pretty straightforward. You basically take Narak. If you've got him, you want to put Narak next to her. Oops, I can't... Oh, there he is. So you want to put Narak in. You also want to put Archon in his usurp mode. And then Narak is buffing the heal, Archon is stealing the heal and buffing it. And so that'll just get you a little bit extra. The other thing is, if you've got Artemis, I do not have Artemis, I'll be picking him up tomorrow. But if you've got Artemis, you'd want to throw him in as well, adjacent to Orkira. You know, you can move things around to make it work. Move Orkira over here, for example, because you don't need to hit everyone with the heal. It's mainly about making sure you get it on Archon with as many adjacent as possible. So, you know, if I was going to do it for serious, I'd probably put them over here. And then I'd want to have Artemis in, and then I'd change around which champions I've got. Something like that. Oops. And because it's Click-Debuff, no, they don't really care where they are. Okay, but let's go back to that. So, one thing that really can't be stressed enough is that this is a process that does require hands-on clicking. You can't just rely on the familiars. You do need to actually sit here and click once in a while. It's also a slow process. You know, the course that we've been going, I've only made it, 15 levels. So, when you do this, you want to pop your potions. Just pop those huge potions. This is what you've been saving them for. Don't hoard them. And settle in for a fairly long haul, because you're trying to go as deep as you can. This is because this requires such specific champions. You're not really going to be able to use this in variants very often. You're generally doing this in free plays, and you're doing it for the purpose of getting your blessings, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. Right? Previously in Avernus, I've only gone up to E28. I'd only done DPS. Already, if I stopped now, I would be up to E35. but I don't want to do that. I want these juicy blessings. So I'm going to go to at least E42, but I should be able to make it. I should be able to make it there. If I can't make it in one run, I'll make it in two. Usually what I've found is that it takes me 2 Click-Debuff runs to get to 1,000. You know, from the first one I'll go from 600, 650, or in this case 725. However, for my DPS team can push. My first run will get me to about 800, 850, somewhere in that range. And then the second run will get me up to 1,000. I expect that'll be similar here. I'm probably going to be a little more stubborn than usual on this one because I don't really want to do 2 runs tonight because I'll be up all night if I do that. So I'm probably going to kind of be extra stubborn about stacking Beetle. I'll probably be really vigilant about swapping in Strix. All these tricks that can make you go further. Because I want to make it in 1 run. Let's see. I think I've covered all the major things with Click-Debuff. Again, just focus on that core, right? You got to make sure you have Kroll and Freely and Jim and Warden or Kira and Ayla. I'd say those are the ones you really want to make sure you have. And again, this is a mid-game strategy. You probably have others. You probably already have all of those, except Ayla's one that sometimes people don't get as early. But these are all great champions. None of the champions that you're picking up are going to be like, oh, I'm sorry I picked up, you're never going to be sad you picked up Ayla. Oh, no. It's not like she's only good in Click-Debuff. No, she's a great tank. She's number 1, number 2 tank in the game, depending on who you ask. Fantastic. And, maybe when you get to the end of the line, the sort of fringier characters like Penelope and Talon, I'm not sure, how really useful those guys are outside of Click-Debuff, but, those were the last 2 I got. I just got Talon yesterday and Penelope the day before that. Gromma's a great champion. You won't regret having. Sentry's a speed champion. Havilar, which I'm not using, but, Havilar's is really solid in these teams just due to her hit point share and her AoE attack and her imps. So, I think that covers it. I'm going to stop here because pretty much the next 5 hours of me playing this game is just going to be me sitting here watching, clicking once in a while, swapping in gems, swapping out. But I hope that this gave you enough to feel comfortable starting Click-Debuff with wherever you are. In terms of other power, so I first did Click-Debuff about 3.5 months into my playing. I'm a little over 4 months in now. So, I did not start with any promotions, so if you started with the Epic Games Store promotion or the, the Steam promotion, you'll probably be able to get to this faster because you started with a whole bunch of great champions anyway, so if you want to work towards this sooner rather than later, you'll be able to. But I have been playing regularly, I have been keeping up with things, but yeah, I didn't get anything for free except for the ones they gave out to everybody for free. Otherwise, it's just been events and the time gate pieces and such that everybody gets. In terms of blessings, I do have most of my blessings. I don't have all the new ones. Okay, yeah, no, I just have the Tiamat ones for the new ones that I still need. That's what I'm doing now. In terms of perks, I have most of the patron perks. I have everything except for some of the Zerial perks. I haven't quite finished that one off. My Modron core, I'm actually using the speed core just because it doesn't make a huge difference. My speed core, I actually just hit 15 with it, but I think I was at about 12 when I started doing this. Just sort of gives you a rough idea of the power level I had when I started and I have now. But odds are, if you're a fairly regular player and you're about 3 months in to 4 months in, yeah, you're probably ready to do this. So don't shy away from it. Go ahead, give it a shot. Just make sure you've got those core champions and a couple of spreaders, and yeah, you're good to go. All right, thank you for watching, and I have been Frost Iron, and I hope you found this helpful. Have a good day.